So today we're going to be doing something a little bit differently with Seneca's letters. We are going to be doing it in this format. Let me know what you guys think at the end of this. I am on letter 26. If you don't know what I'm talking about, I am basically going through Seneca's letters to Lucilius and doing commentary. I'm going to read it to you. I'm going to talk about this, kind of dissect this a little bit, talk about some of the principles here. If you haven't already, make sure you click somewhere around here, click the cards, click the little I, and you can start at video 1 in this series. And I'm going to go through all of them. There's a lot of letters here. We're on letter 26 now. And also make sure you click the subscribe button and the bell so you don't miss any notifications when these videos come out on Seneca's moral letters to Lucilius. Really good if you're interested in Stoic philosophy and Stoic thought. This is basically the best that it gets. I think this is really where you find a lot of the Stoic wisdom and philosophy, but you got to be able to understand it. So that's what I'm helping you do here. So let's jump into this. And like I said, let me know, leave a comment below. Let me know if you like this format or the other format where I'm standing up better, and we'll see. Maybe it's nicer for me to be able to sit down and talk into this mic here. So this is letter 26 on old age and death. And he says here, number 1, I was just lately telling you that I was within sight of old age. I am now afraid that I have left old age behind me, for some other word would now apply to my years, or at any rate to my body, since old age means a time of life that is weary rather than crushed. You may rate me in that worn out class of those who are nearing the end. So this is kind of an interesting, somewhat sad thing that he's saying in his first letter here, which he's saying that he's beyond old age. He's basically crushed. He's not weary, he's crushed. He is at the end. He is worn out. He is going to die soon. 2, nevertheless, offer my thanks to myself with you as witness, for I feel that age has done no damage to my mind, though I feel its effects on my constitution. Only my vices and the outward aids to these vices have reached senility. I think it's senility. My mind is strong and rejoices that it has but slight connection with the body. It has laid aside the greater part of its load. It is alert. It takes issue with me on the subject of old age. It declares that old age is its time of bloom. So interesting. So he's saying here, that yes, his constitution, his body has sort of faded away, but it hasn't done any damage to his mind. And that's interesting because I think you see a lot of elderly people today where their mind is damaged, where they have not used their mind, okay, where their body is frail, but also they have so many vices. They have become the grumpy old man. They have really lost a lot of the mental function because they haven't utilized it, right? And this is what we all will become if we don't utilize our minds, if we do not study philosophy, if we do not think about life. He's saying that this is like a clever thing that he said. He says a lot of clever stuff here, right? So what is he saying? He's saying that basically his vices and the ageless vices are senile. So he's basically saying he doesn't have vices, or those, that he's exceeded those. He's not saying they're stronger. He's saying those are weaker. His mind is strong and rejoices, right, that it doesn't have as much of a connection to the body, right? These are critical things as well. And it doesn't believe that it's old, right? His mind says that this is a time of bloom, okay? Because he's gone through all this other shit in his life, right? Number 3, let me take it at its word, and let it make the most of the advantages it possesses. The mind bids me to do some thinking and consider how much of this piece of spirit and moderation of character I owe to wisdom, and how much to my time of life. It bids me distinguish carefully what I cannot do and what I do not want to do. For why should one complain or regard it as a disadvantage if powers which ought to come to an end have failed? So what is he saying here? He's saying, basically, yeah, let's look at the advantages that it possesses, right? And let's take advantage of those, right? So the mind bids me do some thinking and consider, how much of this is that you owe to wisdom, and how much is the time of life, right? And this is an important thing. Like, are you wiser just because you're older, or are you wiser because of what the wisdom that you've developed over time, right? And I think this is important. It's important just to distinguish this in any case of life, right? Is it that you've actually put in the work and have developed a skill, or did it just come because time passed, right? One of those has a lot more value. And so let's go on here. And he says, but you say it is the greatest possible disadvantage to be worn out and to die off, or rather, if I may speak literally, to melt away. For we are not suddenly smitten and laid low, we are worn away, and every day reduces our powers to a certain extent. It's the greatest possible disadvantage to be worn out and to die off, right? To melt away. So he says that we are worn away every day, and we're gradually losing our power. So this is a disadvantage. Okay, but let's see what Seneca has to say about this. But is there any better end to it all than to glide off one's proper haven when nature slips the cable? Not that there is anything painful in a shock and a sudden departure from existence. It is merely because this other way of departure is easy, a gradual withdrawal. At any rate, as if the test were at hand and the day were come, which is to pronounce its decision concerning all the years of my life, watch over myself and commune thus with myself. So he's saying that, yeah, it's fine. You could just, have your head chopped off or whatever and lose your life suddenly. But this is a gradual departure from existence. And, this is maybe better, right? It's a gradual withdrawal. And he says, and he's ready for it anyway, right? So he basically says that, he communes with himself. He is comfortable with it, right? He has faced this prospect many times already, and he's ready. And it's this process that's happening, right? Number 5. The showing which we have made up to the present time in word or deed counts for nothing. The showing we have made up to the present time in word or deed counts for nothing. So whatever we've done so far, it doesn't matter, okay? He says, all this is but a trifling and deceitful pledge of our spirit and is wrapped in much charlatanism. I shall leave it to death to determine what progress I have made. Therefore, with no faint heart, I am making ready for the day when, putting aside all stage artifice and actor's rogue, I am to pass judgment upon myself, whether I'm merely declaiming brave sentiments or whether I really feel them, whether all the bold threats I have uttered against fortune are pretense and a farce. So all he's saying here is that, he's been talking the big talk about having a scorn for death, okay? It doesn't matter what he said. It doesn't matter what he's done. When the day comes, right, which it's coming, how will he face it? How will he face his death, right? So death is going to determine this. When it comes, he'll find out what is the true manifestation of his character in regarding this, right? Has he really been brave, or has he just declared it to be so, right? And we know actually from history that Seneca was quite brave in his death, as he was commanded by Nero to commit suicide, and he did. Himself slitting his wrists in the bathtub and having an opportunity to probably be banished or to get out of the sentence or to flee, he chose to stay and to do what he was required to do, which is definitely bravery in the face of death. So number 6, put aside the opinion of the world. It is always wavering and always takes both sides. Put aside the studies which you have pursued throughout your life. Death will deliver the final judgment in your case. This is what I mean. Your debates and learned talks, your maxims gathered from the teachings of the wise, your cultured conversation, all of these afford no proof of the real strength of your soul. Even the most timid man can deliver a bold speech. What you have done in the past will be manifest only at the time when you draw your last breath. I can accept the terms. I do not shrink from the decision. So it's kind of interesting, right? He's saying to put aside your opinion of the world. It's wavering and always takes both sides, which is, I think that's an interesting truth that he's dropped here. So he's saying that, again, all the shit that you've done in your life, it doesn't matter. It matters how much you face death. And this seems kind of weird, like to trivialize life, to say that it's all about how you face death. But to some degree, it's right? I mean, if you're living your life to its fullest, right? If you are encountering the things that you're supposed to encounter in life and overcoming the challenges and the fears and inhibitions and all of these things, then you will be ready to face death. The person who is not ready to face death is the person who has felt like they have not really lived their life, who is waiting to live their life. The person who is living their life every day is a person that they don't want to die necessarily, but they are ready for it. But they are accepting of it. They know it is part of life, right? They've studied philosophy. They have a philosophy for their own life. They're living by that philosophy, and thus they're living their life fully. Number 7, this is what I say to myself, but I would have you think that I have said it to you also. You are younger, but what does that matter? There is no fixed count of our years. You do not know where death awaits you, so be ready for it everywhere. It doesn't matter if you're young. That doesn't mean that you're less far away from death, right? You might be close to death and you don't even know, right? No one knows when it's going to come, right? A lot of you, and I think that you could be young right now, right? Watching these videos, maybe in your 20s or even below that, and you think you've got a whole life ahead of you in plenty of time, but you might not. You might only have a week. I mean, you might only have a year. Some people watching this video will only have a week from now, probably, right? I mean, there's a probability of that, a high probability, or maybe a year. So again, this is not to be morbid. It's not to like upset you necessarily, but it should upset you because you should say that I need to be living my life now. Like there is no tomorrow. There is only today. There is only this moment. There is only now. And that's the only moment that we can live in. But we must execute. We must accomplish what we're going to accomplish. We must get on that path today. We don't have time to waste. We don't know which corner death is waiting around. Okay. So be ready for it everywhere. And to be ready for it everywhere means to be living your life constantly. 8, I was just intending to stop and my hand was making ready for the closing sentence, but the rites are still to be performed and the traveling money for the letter dispersed. And just assume that I am not telling where I intend to borrow the necessary sum. You know upon whose coffers I depend. Wait for me but a moment, and I will pay you from my own account. Meanwhile, Epicurus will oblige me with these words. Think on death, or rather, if you prefer the phrase, on migration to heaven. 9, the meaning is clear, that it is a wonderful thing to learn thoroughly how to die. You may deem it superfluous to learn a text that can be used only once, but that is just the reason why we ought to think on a thing. When we can never prove whether we really know a thing, we must always be learning it. 10, think on death. In saying this, he bids us to think on freedom. He who has learned to die has unlearned slavery. He is above any external power, or at any rate, he is beyond it. What terrors have prisons and bonds and bars for him? His way out is clear. There is only one chain which binds us to life, and that is the love of life. This chain, or the chain, may not be cast off, but it may be rubbed away, so that when necessity shall demand, nothing may retard or hinder us from being ready to do at once that which at some time we are bound to do. Farewell. Really powerful section here. I read this all together because I think it all is all one point here, which I think it's easy to lose this point, but here's what he's saying here. Okay, he's saying this. He's saying that really the only thing that prevents you from living your life to its fullest, the only thing that keeps you as a slave, that keeps you bound in some way, is your love of life or your fear of death. The same thing, right? The fact that you don't want to die, and that is what compels you in many of your actions in life. And so if you get rid of this chain, and he said it can't be cast off, but it can be rubbed away, okay? So that when the time comes, like if you get rid of your fear of death, if you have accepted that you will die and that it may be tomorrow, and that you may even take actions that will accelerate your own death, because that if life so calls for it, if you're not afraid of this, right? If you don't have this attachment to life that we're all born with, then you will be a truly free person. Then all of your actions will be uninhibited. They will not be dragged down, right? I mean, think about it this way. If you have no fear of death, if you're willing to die, if you're willing to take your own life, if necessary, okay, then how hard do you fight in battle? You fight with all your heart, right? You don't have any chance of running away. You don't have any fear. How hard do you work? You work as hard as possible. How many risks do you take? How afraid of anything in life are you, right? How much inhibition do you have? How much do you care what other people think? If you're willing to face the greatest thing in life and to accept that, which is death, then what else could possibly harm you? Nothing can harm you. You are invincible, right? Do you understand what I'm saying here? Nothing can harm you if you face death, because that is the greatest, the worst thing that could possibly happen to you. And if you're willing to accept that and even to take your own life if necessary, then what other damage, what other harm could someone else do to you? What other thing would you fear, right? So that's the key. That's the secret. That's why meditating on this, that's why he said, like, yeah, it's a text that you're only going to use once, but all the more reason to study it, right? Is because it's so critical. Because once you accept this and you're willing to do this and you're willing to take these risks in life, and believe me, I've been on the other side of this where I live my life trying to protect myself. Okay. And I tried to prevent death and any bad thing from happening. Okay. And I trapped myself. I became a slave. But when I freed myself, when I said, you know what, fuck this, I'm going to live my life and I'm going to accept the consequences, whatever they may be, I started living my life as a free man and I became much, much more free. And that's critical. I think that's critical in order to really experience life to its fullest. And that's what he's talking about here. So meditate on death, be willing to die, be ready for death. It takes a lifetime to prepare for it, but you better start doing it now. Don't just like suddenly, when you find out that you might not live forever and you realize this, have a midlife crisis or a moment of panic and then do some crazy shit and realize that you don't have much left. Realize it now, that the time is ticking away, that the sand in the hourglass is dropping every second you are closer to death. This is not a morbid concept. It is a reality. And most people bury their head in the sand and don't face this reality. All right, guys, that is all I got for you today. I'm losing my voice. Make sure you click the subscribe button down below to make sure you don't miss any of these letters. Great Stoic wisdom. Leave a comment below. Let me know what you're thinking about this new format. And if you'd rather me do the stand-up one or this one, I'll talk to you next time. Take care. See ya, Bulldogs.